I've dealt with criminals, drug dealers, domestic calls gone bad, bar fights that turned into felony assaults. I've seen some crazy things in my years in law enforcement, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the day a group of fake HOA cops tried to arrest me for watering my lawn. Let's rewind. It started 2 weeks after I moved into my new house. I'd been working night shifts at the county sheriff's office, taking time off when I could to settle in. I bought the place with one thing in mind: peace. It was tucked at the edge of a suburban neighborhood, not too flashy, just quiet. And then I met Karen. She introduced herself the same way every neighborhood tyrant does, uninvited, clipboard in hand, fake smile glued to her face. "Hi, I'm Karen, president of the Oak Hollow HOA. Just wanted to welcome you to the community." I knew right away what she was, the kind of person who loves rules not for safety but for power. She didn't come to say hello, she came to inspect. Her eyes darted around. She looked at my grass, my fence line, the angle of my trash bins. She looked past me into my garage. Then she asked the question that set everything in motion. "Have you registered with the HOA yet?" I shook my head. Wasn't aware I needed to. My realtor told me this property wasn't under the HOA. That fake smile twitched. "All properties in Oak Hollow are required to comply with HOA standards. You'll be receiving the welcome packet soon. Don't worry, I'll make sure it finds you." I said nothing, just nodded and closed the door, but the packet showed up the next day. It came in a thick white envelope dropped off by hand. Inside was a glossy brochure, a list of community standards, a dues payment schedule, and a violation warning already filled out. Violation #001, improper mailbox color, fine $150. My mailbox was black, brand new, standard issue. I tossed the packet in the trash and went about my day. A week later, I got another notice. This time, violation #002, lawn watering on non-permitted day. Fine, $250. This was a drought-prone area and the city had rules, odd/even watering days based on your address. I was following those rules. The HOA, they had different ones. Ones they made up, I ignored it again. Then came a letter marked, "Final notice, enforcement action pending." Enforcement. That's when I raised an eyebrow. See, I was off duty that week, had time to think, and I know the law. I knew that, unless the HOA was legally registered and my property was formally included in its governance, they had no real authority, so I did my homework. I went down to the county recorder's office, pulled the records, and sure enough, my property was never annexed into the HOA. It was originally zoned as an independent lot, and though they tried to absorb it a few years back, the paperwork had never gone through. I was officially, legally, and permanently not under their control. That should have ended it, but Karen didn't like no. A few days later, I noticed a car parked across the street, unmarked, tinted windows, didn't move for hours. The next day, someone rang my doorbell, then ran off. I checked the camera. Teenager in a cheap security-style uniform holding a clipboard. Then the officers showed up. I was in the garage, working on my motorcycle, when I heard the knock, loud and aggressive. Not a neighborly knock, the kind you hear when trouble's on the other side. I stepped out and found 2 men standing on my porch, black polo shirts, badges clipped to their belts, plastic. Radio earpieces. One had a utility belt with zip ties hanging off it like they were cuffs. The taller one stepped forward. "Are you the owner of this property?" "Who's asking?" "We're with Oak Hollow Community Enforcement. You've been cited for multiple HOA violations. We have orders to detain you for non-compliance." I stared at him. "You have what?" He held up a piece of paper, an arrest warrant printed on HOA letterhead, signed by Karen. I almost laughed, almost. Instead, I folded my arms. "You're saying you're here to arrest me?" "That's correct." "Failure to pay fines, non-compliance with HOA orders, obstruction." I looked at the badges again, thin plastic, no agency numbers. I looked at the warrant, no legal backing, no court signature, no sheriff's seal, just Karen's name in bold print. Then I asked the one question they weren't ready for. "You guys know what I do for a living?" They hesitated. "Sir, we're not here to debate." I reached into the side cabinet and pulled out my badge, sheriff's office, real metal, real authority. I held it up. Let the light catch it. "I'm an off-duty sheriff, and what you're doing right now, it's impersonating law enforcement, attempted false arrest, and trespassing. You've got about 5 seconds to get off my property." The short one took a full step back. The tall one blinked. We were just following orders. Karen give you those orders, he nodded. You got her number? Another nod. I stepped inside, grabbed my phone, and called dispatch. This is Deputy Avery, badge 4163. I've got two individuals impersonating officers attempting an unlawful detainment at my residence. I'm requesting immediate backup. Their faces drained. They ran before the squad car even pulled into the neighborhood. I filed a formal police report that night. Gave the footage, the fake warrant, and every violation letter I'd received. My lieutenant flagged it for legal review. Karen had crossed a line, and I had every intention of holding her accountable. But Karen, she wasn't done. Because 3 days later, I came home to find my mailbox ripped off its post, my trash cans tipped over, and a bright red sign zip-tied to my front door. This property is in violation. Do not engage with homeowner. Proceeding to enforcement stage. They weren't just threatening anymore. They were trying to scare me. But what Karen didn't know was, she had just triggered the one thing you never want to mess with. An off-duty sheriff with evidence, time, and zero tolerance for fake authority. And the next move I made would end her HOA fantasy for good. The next morning, I was already parked outside the county sheriff's office before the sun came up. I had the security footage from my front porch. I had printed copies of the fake warrant. And I had a folder packed with every violation, every note, every phony claim Karen's HOA had dropped in my mailbox since I moved in. When my lieutenant arrived, he saw the look on my face and didn't even ask questions. He just said, "Come in." I laid it all out, and I mean everything. From the first fake fine to the night two wannabe goons tried to arrest me, to the vandalized mailbox and that bright red "Do Not Engage" sign zip-tied to my door. My lieutenant flipped through the file and looked up at me. "Are these people for real?" "Dead serious," I said. "And they're getting bolder." He set the file down and said the words I was waiting for. "All right, let's shut them down." By noon that day, we'd opened a criminal investigation into the HOA board, starting with Karen, the so-called president, and expanding to the two imposters who tried to take me in. They weren't licensed security, they weren't bonded, they weren't even neighborhood residents. But I already knew that, because after they ran, I'd run their plates, off-duty or not. I still had access. The car they showed up in was registered to a private community enforcement company that Karen had quietly created herself. Filed just 6 weeks before I moved in. No employees. No legal contracts. Just a P.O. box, a website full of buzzwords, and 2 fake uniforms bought online. She invented her own police force. And now, the sheriff's department was on her trail. While the department handled the criminal side, I reached out to a good friend of mine, Darla, a lawyer who specialized in HOA abuse cases. When I dropped the full story on her desk, she just shook her head. "Let me guess, she assumed you'd fold." "She assumed wrong." Darla grinned. "Good. Let's ruin her." We started with a formal cease and desist, delivered by certified mail and email. It demanded the following: a written statement from the HOA acknowledging I was not under their jurisdiction, immediate removal of all fines, notices, and records tied to my address, a full list of board members and any third-party enforcement agents under their control, a public correction issued to the neighborhood about the false claims against me. They had 5 business days to comply. If they didn't, we'd file for defamation, harassment, and impersonation of law enforcement, both civilly and criminally. Instead of complying, Karen doubled down. 2 days later, I got an email from a new address, enforcement at Oak Patrol. It was a summons for a disciplinary hearing scheduled at the HOA clubhouse. She actually used the phrase, "Failure to appear may result in escalated response from community enforcement officers." I printed it out, handed it to Darla, and she laughed out loud. "This woman's writing her own arrest warrant." "Yep, so," she asked, "want to crash the hearing?" "Absolutely." The day of the hearing, I walked into the HOA clubhouse in uniform, not to flex, just to make sure they saw it was real. Darla came too. Inside, I found Karen, sitting at the front of a folding table like some courtroom judge. Her clipboard was stacked with fake reports. Next to her sat 2 board members, silent, awkward, visibly uncomfortable, on the other side of the room. 2 more guys in black polos. The same ones from my porch. I walked up, dropped a manila envelope on the table and said, "You're all under investigation. You might want to lawyer up." Karen's smug face cracked just a little. "You don't have jurisdiction here," she said. "No," I said, "but the state does. And the sheriff's department does. And so does the district attorney's office, who just got a copy of everything you've done." She blinked. I opened the envelope and spread out the papers. County property records showing I was exempt from HOA control, cease and desist letters, printouts from her fake Oak Patrol business, screenshots of her emails threatening arrest, and photos of her 2 fake officers on my porch holding that plastic badge. "You can't just come into someone's home," I said, "dress like a cop and try to take them away. That's impersonation. That's a felony." One of the board members leaned over and whispered something to her. She didn't reply, so I added, "Oh, and just so you know, this entire clubhouse is currently under surveillance. Sheriff's deputies are listening from outside. If you'd like to escalate, now's your chance." Karen stood up. "This is harassment," Darla stepped in. "No, what you did was harassment. What you did was fraud. What you're about to experience is called accountability." That's when Karen grabbed her folder and stormed out the back exit. The officers followed. I stood there for a second, looked at the 2 board members still seated, and said, "You boys sticking around, or are we shutting this circus down?" One of them sighed. "We didn't sign up for this." They slid their chairs back and walked out. I thought that would be the end, but it wasn't. Because that night, Karen snapped. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more wild, real-life HOA drama, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber keeps me motivated to dig deeper, write more, and bring you even crazier stories. Your support means the world. It's what keeps this channel going strong. So stick around, because we've got way more chaos coming your way. Back to the Karen. She went into full meltdown mode around 2 a.m. My Ring cam picked her up on my porch, no disguise. Just her and a screwdriver trying to pry the no trespassing sign off my door. She was muttering something about so-called laws, and we'll see who really has authority. I didn't confront her. I just called dispatch. The responding deputies showed up within 5 minutes. She didn't even argue when they cuffed her. I stood on my porch and watched as she sat in the back of the patrol car, messy hair, panic in her eyes, still clinging to that clipboard like it gave her power. But it was over, and she knew it. The charges: criminal trespass, vandalism, impersonating a peace officer, attempted unlawful detainment, and operating a fraudulent business. Karen's fake Oak Patrol was shut down within 48 hours. The HOA board dissolved within a week, and the residents, they didn't just celebrate, they revolted. By the next morning, everyone knew what had happened. Word spread fast in a place like Oak Hollow, especially when it involved the HOA president getting arrested off a homeowner's porch in the middle of the night, still gripping a screwdriver and wearing slippers. Neighbors were texting me by 8 a.m. Is it true? Was Karen really arrested? Did she actually try to start her own police force? I didn't have to say much. The video footage, clean, high-def, timestamped, was already making its rounds in the community Facebook group. Someone even screenshotted the moment Karen was being walked to the patrol car and turned it into a meme. The caption: "When you try to play cop but get cuffed for real." And that was just the beginning. The sheriff's department's investigation kicked into full gear now that Karen had been booked. The Oak Patrol company she created, it wasn't just a hobby project. She'd used HOA funds to create it. Thousands of dollars in board-approved expenses for community security initiatives, all funneled into her fake operation. The uniforms, paid for by dues. The plastic badges, paid for by dues. Even the car that showed up in front of my house. A rental, billed directly to the HOA budget as a surveillance asset. This wasn't just impersonation. This was financial fraud, unauthorized use of member funds, and operating without insurance, oversight, or any state-licensed credentials. She wasn't going to get a slap on the wrist for this. She was going to court, real court. But Karen's mess didn't stop with me. The deeper investigators dug, the more victims surfaced. One woman down the street had been fined $500 for failure to maintain landscaping uniformity. Her crime: growing wildflowers in her front yard for her bees. A family around the corner was threatened with daily citations for leaving their kids' bikes in the driveway overnight. Another guy, he got slapped with a public disturbance fee because he hosted a retirement BBQ in his backyard that ran after HOA quiet hours. None of these rules were real. None of these fines were legal. But people had been paying them for years because they were scared, overwhelmed, or just didn't know they had options. Until now, I helped organize a community town hall. No board, no agenda, just neighbors meeting at the park. We brought copies of the original HOA charter, the legal exemption records, and everything Karen had forged or manipulated. Darla came too, answering questions, walking people through how to file disputes or reverse fines. Over 100 people showed up. And what started as a gathering turned into a movement. We formed a new committee, not an HOA board, just residents, whose only job was to audit every fine Karen had issued, document and report every instance of abuse, help neighbors, submit refund claims and legal complaints. And the crazy part, over $70,000 in bogus fines had been issued in just under 3 years. People brought folders, screenshots, even receipts showing mandatory compliance fees they paid for things like wind chimes, seasonal flags, or dog leash lengths. It was a full-blown racket, and we were going to dismantle every piece of it. A week later, we got a letter from Karen's attorney, a cease and desist. He accused me, Darla, and the entire neighborhood group of slander, defamation, and organized harassment. He said Karen had suffered enough and deserved to be left in peace while her case is pending. We posted the letter on the bulletin board and wrote one word underneath it: nope. Then came the county audit report. It confirmed Karen had diverted funds into multiple personal projects. Several board members had rubber-stamped expenses without documentation, and nearly half of the HOA's budget had gone toward either enforcing fake rules or paying Karen's security team. They issued an order. All HOA activity in Oak Hollow is to be suspended indefinitely. A new election will be supervised directly by county oversight. Boom. Board dissolved, accounts frozen, fake fines voided. Karen's empire gone. She tried to go on the defensive, posted an open letter online claiming she was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. She blamed me, blamed the sheriff's department, said the neighborhood had lost its sense of order, but no one was listening. Especially not the district attorney, who had just added a new charge: tampering with official documents, specifically doctoring the HOA's jurisdiction map to include homes like mine that were never part of it. She wasn't just facing fines now, she was facing felony charges. Meanwhile, Oak Hollow transformed. With Karen gone, the mood shifted overnight. Kids played outside without parents worrying about noise fines. Flags flew. Lawn furniture stayed out. People brought their trash cans in when they wanted, not because they were scared of citations. And as for the 2 fake cops, one confessed, said Karen promised them easy security jobs and told them she had legal authority through the HOA. He flipped, gave up emails, texts, payment receipts. The other one skipped town, but it didn't matter. The evidence was stacked a mile high. A month later, the community held a real vote, this time under full county supervision, and elected a new board made up of actual residents with no interest in control, just fairness. Their first act, issue a formal apology to the entire neighborhood. Their second, approve full reimbursements for every fraudulent fine paid during Karen's reign. Homeowners who thought they'd never see that money again got checks in the mail. I watched a single mom across the street cry when she opened hers. Karen took hundreds from her. Now she was getting it back. But I still wasn't done, because the last thing I wanted was for this to ever happen again, to me or anyone else. So I worked with the new board to help create a homeowner bill of rights, a short, plain language guide that explained exactly what the HOA could and couldn't do. It listed what authority was real and what wasn't, and at the top in bold capital letters it said, no enforcement actions may be taken against non-HOA homes. We made sure every household got one, printed, signed, stamped by the county. Karen had turned fear into policy. Now we were turning truth into protection. The legal wheels had started turning fast, but Karen, she was still trying to spin the story like she was the victim. Her lawyer went on local radio saying the charges were politically motivated and that community standards had to be enforced, even in difficult situations. They didn't mention the fake cops or the doctored HOA maps, or the fact that Karen tried to arrest a sitting sheriff's deputy on his own porch using a warrant she printed on her office printer. But the DA's office wasn't buying any of it, because by now, this had moved beyond HOA drama. This was about fraud, impersonation, and systemic abuse. And it was unraveling fast. The deeper we looked, the more we found. One of the new board members, a retired accountant, started combing through every HOA expenditure from the last 4 years. She flagged over $18,000 paid to a maintenance consulting firm that didn't exist, nearly $6,000 for HOA officer training seminars. In resorts, Karen had personally visited monthly payments to Oak Hollow Enforcement. The same fake security firm Karen created under her own name. We discovered Karen had quietly funneled HOA dues into personal bank accounts using made-up companies. She wasn't just power-hungry, she was stealing. And now there was proof that triggered a formal grand jury hearing. Karen was served a subpoena at her temporary rental across town. Her lawyer tried to delay it, tried to argue that HOA operations fell into a legal gray area. But the DA laid it out clearly. This isn't about enforcement. This is about impersonating law enforcement and stealing from your neighbors. The media picked up the story again. New headlines dropped. Fake HOA cop scandal deepens. Sheriff's office uncovers years of fraud in HOA takeover. Oak Hollow residents fight back and win. People across the state were watching now. And more victims, not just in Oak Hollow, but in other neighborhoods Karen had consulted for, started to come forward. Turns out she'd been coaching other HOA boards on community enforcement techniques, selling them templates for fake violation letters, offering off-the-books compliance training. It was a hustle, and it finally collapsed. Karen tried to hit back one more time. Filed a countersuit against the HOA board and me personally for defamation and character assassination. Said we'd ruined her ability to serve. She showed up in court with a thick folder and a whole lot of attitude. But the judge wasn't playing along. You sent 2 unlicensed civilians to a resident's home to conduct an arrest with a fake warrant, he said. That's not enforcement, that's a felony. The case was tossed in minutes. Karen was fined for court costs and warned to stop filing frivolous lawsuits. And then came the real blow. The FBI got involved, because remember that federal grant money the HOA had received for community improvements. Well, Karen had signed off on those expenses too, except the improvements never happened, the money gone, and that meant federal charges were now on the table. The day that news broke, I got a call from a reporter who asked, "Do you think this has gone too far?" I just said, "No, it went too far when she put fake cuffs on my porch." By now, Oak Hollow didn't just look different, it felt different. The fences weren't being measured. The trash cans stayed out an extra day or two, people waved again. And I finally did something I hadn't done in weeks. I sat on my porch, drank my coffee, and just enjoyed the silence. No patrols, no clipboard warriors, no fake violations shoved under my door. It was almost peaceful. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I walked across the street to a neighbor's house, Mr. Bennett. He was in his late 70s. He'd been quiet through everything. But the day Karen got arrested, he came over and said something I'll never forget. Took me too long to stand up. Glad someone finally did. Turns out she'd fined him $1,200 over 2 years for improper lawn maintenance. Even threatened to put a lien on his house. He paid it just to make her go away. Now he was getting it back. I helped him file the paperwork. When he got the refund check in the mail, he didn't say much. Just nodded, folded it neatly, and smiled. That's when I knew this wasn't just about my story anymore. We created a resource center with the new HOA board. Helped over 60 families recover their fines. Helped 17 neighbors file small claims for damages. Helped 3 residents reverse liens placed by Karen's board. And we made sure no future board could ever pull the same tricks again. New bylaws, new oversight. New enforcement rules, strictly limited, reviewed quarterly, and zero tolerance for abuse. No more private patrols, no more unauthorized fines, no more playing pretend. Then came Karen's sentencing. The courtroom was quiet when the charges were read. Felony impersonation of law enforcement wire, fraud, misuse of public funds, attempted unlawful detainment, forgery, criminal trespassing. Her lawyer begged for leniency. The judge wasn't having it. He handed down 2 years probation, a $25,000 restitution order, and a permanent ban from participating in any HOA leadership role again. Her reaction, she just stood there. No words, no clipboard. Just a quiet, defeated stare at the floor. Back in the neighborhood, the HOA officially reopened with a new board and a new name. Oak Hollow Neighborhood Alliance. They made it clear, we don't enforce, we support. They got rid of all the Karen-era nonsense. No more approved fence colors, no more decorative flag restrictions, no more quiet hours enforcement for private property. The only rules now: be respectful, take care of your space, and don't be a Karen. A year after Karen tried to slap cuffs on me in my own driveway, Oak Hollow was unrecognizable. Not physically, the houses were still the same, the lawns were still mowed, and the mailboxes still stood in their little rows. But the feel of the place, totally different. No more paranoia. No more power trips. No more HOA agents lurking around with clipboards, writing up violations for non-standard mulch or flag orientation. It finally felt like a neighborhood again. Every now and then, a new family would move in. A moving truck would pull up, and they'd start unloading boxes with that mix of stress and excitement that comes with starting fresh. And almost every time, they'd knock on my door eventually. Sometimes to ask a question about trash pickup, sometimes to borrow a tool, sometimes just to say hi. But more than once, someone would say, "Hey, you're the guy from the pool cop thing, right?" Yeah, that was me. I didn't wear it like a badge of honor, but I didn't shy away from it either, because what started as a ridiculous attempt to control me turned into something a lot bigger. It turned into people standing up for themselves, and that's worth owning. As for Karen, she moved out quietly. No goodbye, no notice. Her sentencing stuck: 2 years probation, $25,000 in restitution, and a permanent ban from HOA boards statewide. She tried to appeal the ban once. It didn't go well. The court reminded her that trying to arrest someone with a fake badge and a fake warrant is not protected by community regulations. No one's heard from her since, and honestly, that's for the best. The 2 guys she hired to pose as her community officers, one disappeared. The other showed up in court and testified, admitted she manipulated them with promises of easy pay and limited risk. He walked out with probation and community service, and last I heard, he was working at a real security firm, licensed this time and doing things by the book. Maybe something good came out of it for him too, but the best part, we turned the HOA's mess into something useful. The new board created a fund, financed by recovered fines and the restitution money, to help neighbors fix things Karen had penalized them for. Dead patches of grass from denied watering schedules, paid for; cracked fences from delayed repairs; covered lien fees from bogus citations, reimbursed. We called it the Neighbor First Fund, because that's what it should have always been about: neighbors, not control, and me. I stayed on the outside. I didn't run for board. I didn't ask for a position, but I did help create one thing: the Oak Hollow Homeowner Protection Manual, simple, clear, and only 12 pages long. It explained what rights homeowners have, what an HOA can and cannot legally do, and most importantly, how to fight back if someone abuses their power. We gave every household a copy. One neighbor told me it was the first time she felt like she actually owned her house, not rented it from a group of angry strangers. That meant more to me than anything else. But there was one moment that stuck with me more than any other. It happened 6 months after everything blew over. I was sitting on my porch, coffee in hand, just watching the street like I always did. A little girl rode her bike past, streamers fluttering from the handlebars. Behind her was her mom, same woman Karen once fined $300 for unsupervised child noise. She waved. I waved back. Then the girl stopped and pointed at my mailbox. "Mom, is that the house where the fake police came?" The mom looked at me embarrassed and said, "Yeah, but the real police lived here too." I just smiled, because that was all it needed to be. Later that summer, the new board organized a cookout at the park. Just a way to say thanks to everyone who stepped up, spoke out, and helped clean house. There were burgers, music, water balloons, and more folding chairs than I thought existed in one zip code. Halfway through the event, they brought me up to say a few words. I didn't prepare anything. Didn't want to, so I just said this. This started with someone trying to control a neighborhood with fear. But fear only works when no one pushes back, and when one person does. That's usually enough to remind everyone else that they can too. That was it. People clapped. Someone handed me a cold soda. And a minute later, a kid accidentally hit me in the chest with a water balloon. Perfect timing. Looking back now, I don't regret a second of it. Not the late nights documenting everything, not the tension, not the hearings, not even the fake warrant on my porch, because it reminded me of something I sometimes forget. Even as a sheriff, authority isn't about badges, it's about doing the right thing. And when people fake it, when they weaponize it to harass, intimidate, or control others, someone's got to stand up and shut it down. That time it was me. Next time might be you. So if you're ever faced with a clipboard queen, a power-tripping HOA, or someone inventing laws that don't exist, don't stay quiet. Check your paperwork. Know your rights. Push back hard. Because that quiet moment in your own backyard, that's worth fighting for. And sometimes all it takes is one fake arrest to take down a very real problem.